I was abducted by a succubi, but this wasn't the worst part. My name is Tom Norton, or what's left of him. I sit here now, a husk of a man, watching the world burn, a monument to my own monumental folly. My story isn't one of heroism or grand adventure, but a descent into a personal hell that dragged all of humanity with it. It began, as all tragedies do, with a whisper of forbidden desire. The whisper of forbidden desire. My life before her was a tapestry woven with threads of profound loneliness, and a gnawing sense of insignificance. I was a man adrift, yearning for something more, something to fill the unbearable void within me. My studies in esoteric lore, initially a mere intellectual curiosity, slowly morphed into an obsession, a perceived escape from the bleak existence that suffocated me. I was an anti-hero in my own grim tale, flawed and morally ambiguous, driven by a cynical worldview that saw the mundane as a cage. This deep-seated need, this desperate yearning for ultimate connection, for a love that transcended the ordinary, or perhaps simply to escape the silence of my own soul, was my fatal flaw. It made me susceptible to the succubus's unique allure, setting the stage for a downfall that, looking back, feels as though it was always carved into the stone of my destiny. The preparations for the summoning ritual were meticulous, drawn from obscure spore, forbidden texts I'd unearthed from dusty, forgotten corners of the world. The atmosphere in my study, the night I performed the ritual, was thick with the scent of strange herbs and the flickering dance of arcane candles. A tense quiet hung in the air, broken only by the rustle of ancient parchment and the frantic beat of my own heart. I knew the inherent danger, the sense of playing with fire without knowing how to control the fire. But my desperation, a hunger more profound than any fear, overrode all caution. The ritual itself was a slow burn of escalating tension, a deliberate transgression against the natural order. The air grew heavy, shadows stretched and danced with unnatural life, and a chilling presence began to coalesce. A palpable manifestation of the sinister and perilous nature of the dark magic I had invoked. Her arrival was not violent, but overwhelmingly seductive. She manifested as my idealized partner, a vision of beauty so profound it stole the breath from my lungs, yet I knew, deep down, it concealed her true demonic form. I remember her alluring appearance in intoxicating detail. Every curve, every glance, every whisper seemed to speak directly to my deepest, most secret desires. Her initial interaction was a subtle dance of manipulation. She didn't demand, she enticed, her voice a silken thread woven directly into my mind, blurring the lines of reality even before physical contact. This psychic seduction, I would learn, was her primary power, her most potent weapon. Abducted by shadow and silk, the abduction wasn't a sudden snatching, as one might imagine, but a gradual, insidious drawing into her world. I was never physically taken from my home. Rather, my mind, my will, my very essence were ensnared. Night after night, she entered my dreams, engaging in acts of seduction and feeding off my energy. I remember the profound feeling of being rendered incapable of resisting, a mental and spiritual paralysis that left me utterly vulnerable. There was a terrifying loss of time, a blurring of my waking and dreaming life that made it increasingly difficult to discern what was real, and what was merely a phantom of my corrupted mind. The experience was often accompanied by feelings of suffocation and a draining sensation. Yet paradoxically, it was laced with a perverse, intoxicating pleasure. Our intimate contact deepened, becoming a nightly ritual. Each encounter brought an intoxicating high, followed by a profound weakness and exhaustion. My physical vitality waned, but perversely, my sexual urge increased. And my arrogance increased, making me even more susceptible to her influence and less capable of rational thought. I felt my life force being siphoned away, gradual deterioration that I initially dismissed or attributed to mundane causes. I'm willing to admit the horrifying truth of my predicament. This systematic psychological and energetic draining was not merely an attack. It was a calculated alteration of my perception and will, transforming me from a mere victim into a complicit participant in my own downfall. The amplified desires and heightened arrogance were not just symptoms of her feeding, but insidious tools of manipulation that steered me, inevitably, towards the forbidden act of procreation. My personal demons, both literal and metaphorical, were paving the way for the greater horror to come. My first-person narrative, even then, was becoming increasingly unreliable, a reflection of my deteriorating sanity. I saw fleeting glimpses of her true demonic form, bat-like wings, horns, a tail, but my corrupted mind dismissed them as hallucinations or dream residue. My life outside her influence crumbled. Friends and family were neglected, my responsibilities forgotten. I became isolated, my world shrinking to only myself and her, creating a bleak and foreboding atmosphere that mirrored my internal despair. I was consumed by my inner demons, a prisoner in a reality of my own making. The Unholy Progeny, the night of procreation, was the culmination of her relentless psychic and physical influence. I remember it as an act where my will was utterly subsumed by hers, a forced union, even if my corrupted mind, in its delirium, perceived it as desire. There was a chilling clinical detachment to it, a sense that for her, it was a cold, calculated act rather than one of passion. I later recalled the horrifying lore that with every drop of semen, a new demon is created, a realization that dawned on me with a sickening clarity. The act was not one of love, but of dark magic and necessity for the succubus, test I inevitably failed, sealing my doom and that of everything I knew. The birth was a grotesque, visceral horror. The gestation was unnaturally swift, and the delivery agonizing alien. The children were born not as frail infants, but already displaying unsettling signs of their demonic heritage. I saw their inhuman eyes, glowing with an unnatural light, and the nascent bat-like wings already present on their backs. The rapid aging was immediately apparent, as they grew from infants to toddlers in a matter of days, their physical appearance accelerating at an alarming rate. This unnerving development was the first true manifestation of the worst part. The act of procreation was the definitive point of no return for me, transforming my personal entanglement into a global catastrophe. The immediate, unsettling manifestation of their powers ensured that the terrorizing of mankind was not a distant threat, but an immediate, escalating horror directly linked to my actions. The offspring, I realized with a gut-wrenching certainty, were the true horror. Even in their accelerated infancy, the hybrids exhibited terrifying abilities. Their unnatural strength, their unsettling intelligence, and a palpable aura of malevolence were undeniable. They were not merely children. They were nascent forces of chaos, already displaying powers that surpassed human comprehension. My horror was no longer a creeping dread, but a full-blown, soul-shattering realization of the apocalypse I had unleashed. I saw the hideous children and understood with chilling finality the irreversible nature of my fatal mistake. The Scourge of Mankind, the horrifying speed with which my children grew into monstrous beings, was beyond anything I could have conceived. Their powers escalated exponentially, far surpassing any Nephilim or Cambion. I witnessed their methods of terror firsthand. Not just physical destruction, but supernatural mind control that turned communities against themselves. The poisoning of water sources, the burning of fertile lands, and the consumption of human flesh. They were personifications of destruction, reveling in chaos, their very existence a living storm. Their mother, the succubus, watched with cold satisfaction, her true demonic nature now fully unveiled and horrifying, perhaps even guiding their malevolent acts. The world rapidly descended into chaos, a grim reflection of the existential despair that had consumed me. Cities became desolate ruins, once vibrant forests transformed into haunted, foreboding landscapes, and the environment itself turned hostile. I witnessed the breakdown of all societal structures, the rise of suspicion and fear, and the utter loss of hope among the dwindling human population. The stakes were no longer personal, but the very fate of a kingdom or character's soul. No, it was the fate of all mankind. My initial, desperate desire, fueled by my fatal flaw, had unleashed an apocalyptic force. My internal decay and despair had become a microcosm of humanity's suffering, and the terrorizing of mankind was the ultimate, devastating ripple effect of my initial summoning. This collective human tragedy, directly attributable to me, was the bitter fruit of my actions. I was a living testament to my own folly, forced to witness the global apocalypse I'd birthed. My initial desires were now a bitter, distant memory, replaced by an overwhelming, soul-crushing guilt. I made futile attempts to intervene, to atone, only to be met with the overwhelming, unstoppable power of my offspring.
Ow.
My personal downfall was complete. I was a broken man, consumed by the horror I unleashed, trapped in the nightmare of my own making. I was the very embodiment of a character who creates their own misery in the decisions they make, to bitter end. My sanity has completely unraveled. My thoughts are fractured. A constant echo of screams and grotesque images plague my mind. I am consumed by my inner demons, the guilt and regret, a torment far worse than any physical pain. My body, already weakened by the succubus's draining, is now a mere husk, mirroring the desolation of the world around me. I am a man who succumbed to the very evil he feared. I have seen humanity's last, desperate and ultimately futile resistance. There is no cavalry, no miraculous intervention. My hybrids were an unstoppable force, their reign absolute. The world is a desolate, silent graveyard, a monument to my monumental folly. I face my end now, not with defiance, but with a profound, weary acceptance of my deserved fate. My death will not be heroic, but a final, tragic consequence, a quiet surrender to the overwhelming despair I brought upon the world. There was no other ending possible, given my initial choices and the nature of the forces I unleashed. My last moments are steeped in existential despair, a bleak reflection on the meaninglessness of my life and the brutal, irreversible destruction I caused. There is no hope, only the cold, hard truth of a world irrevocably lost. In these dying thoughts, the truth of the title screams at me. The abduction was merely the prelude. The seductive ensnarement, the draining of my life force, even the loss of my sanity, these were but whispers of the coming storm. The true horror, the worst part, was the monstrous legacy I spawned. The terrorizing of all mankind, and the utter, hopeless desolation of the world. My personal tragedy is inextricably linked to the universal catastrophe, making my demise a poignant, grim conclusion. This is the catastrophic price of dabbling in forbidden knowledge and unchecked desire.
Oh, my complete personal and physical ruin, mirrored by the global apocalypse, underscores the theme that some desires carry.
An irreversible, world-ending cost. The worst part is ultimately my living nightmare of witnessing the destruction I caused.